Hey, good to see you. Thanks for joining me. Welcome to Sungrand. This is a cool place where we can all just hang out. Go ahead and set your pack down and grab a seat. I've got a story for you today. This is something that actually happened to me quite a few years ago. This would have been in the early 2010s. So at the time, I had been working as a professional photographer in photo marketing, photojournalism. I was specializing personally in landscape photography, especially in night photography, wildlife, and I had been out of high school for many years at that point. But there was a guy who I will refer to protect his privacy. I'll just refer to him as Darian. But he was 3 years behind me in high school. And I think at some point, I don't know if he reached out to me over Facebook, but at some point we reconnected and he saw that I was doing photography professionally for work. And so he said, hey, do you think you could teach me about night photography? I'd like to try some night photography. I said, yeah, sure, that'll be fun. And so stick through to the end of the story, because there's just a fun little twist. It's not a big deal, it's just a little twist at the end of the story. And so I thought, you know what would be a great place to take him is Knight's Ferry. This is on Highway 120 in California. And I think he had probably seen some of my night landscape photos from along the Pacific Crest Trail in the Sierra Nevadas, high up in the mountains of California. I had done night photography around Knight's Ferry. And Knight's Ferry is in an unincorporated town. There's some people that live there, but there are some ghost town buildings left over that are so interesting to see. It has the world's longest covered bridge that goes over the river there. And Darian said, yeah, let's go. So I wrangled up two of my other buddies, Derek and Thomas. And I said, hey, guys, let's go. We can go for a night hike. We can do some photography. So I think we caught up with Darian, probably at a Denny's, where we probably got food poisoning afterward. And we were discussing the plan. I said, this is the gear that you will need to bring. I'll bring a tripod for you. At that point in my career, I was conducting photography lessons as well. I was running workshop with small groups. I was doing presentations at events related to different kinds of aspects in photography. And I said to him, hey man, if you want to go to a cool place, we'll go to Knight's Ferry. It's about, half an hour out from Oakdale. And so we set a date for it. I said, bring this, bring that. It's going to be a little bit cold. But while we were sitting down to dinner, I told him a story of something that had happened probably the year before. No, maybe 2 years before. Actually, no, the story I'm thinking of must have happened about 4 or 5 years prior, up until that point. Now, I was telling him Derek and I had been hiking up in Yosemite National Park, and it was early into winter, I believe, and Derek and I had been hiking. We ended up finding large footprints in the snow, and they looked pretty fresh, and we weren't exactly sure what they were, but unless the footsteps had sort of gone over it, I thought it could have been bear, but that's a story for another day. And so I was telling Darian this, and then that story ends up in a little bit of a close call. And he said, yeah, sure, no way. And I was telling him, no, man, sometimes, Darian had never been hiking. He'd never been out anywhere kind of dangerous or anything. And I was telling him stories of stuff that I'd done in places I'd been with Derek and Thomas before. And I said, look, man, things can happen. Sometimes there's animals out there. Things get a little bit hairy sometimes. And he's saying, yeah, sure, okay. Real funny, guys. You're saying that just to scare me. And Darian had this mindset because I was a senior in high school when he was a freshman. So obviously, there was in the past we had sort of been joking and telling stories just to mess with seniors. But I think at that point I was in my early 20s. He may have been 19 or 20 at the time. And so I said, okay, you don't believe me about it, but that's fine. It's Knight's Ferry. It's not that dangerous. It's just a nice little town, and it's in the foothills, and you can do some scrambling up along the boulders and go along the river. And I said, look, you have to park in town, and and you walk a little bit. And so, okay, cool. So we set a date. And so we set out from our hometown where we grew up and went to high school. And so it's about 45, 50 minutes to Knight's Ferry. So you head eastward on Highway 120, and it was probably 9 at night when we set out. And we're driving past all our old haunts, the bowling alley, the arcades, the Denny's, all the burger joints that we used to hang out at, definitely Taco Bell. And as we leave those warm lights behind us, we end up driving farther and farther along the highway, and as we go eastward on 120, the road becomes bendier, and the sky gets darker, and suddenly there aren't any lights anywhere around us. And you're heading up towards Yosemite National Park, but you gotta keep an eye out. On your left-hand side, you'll see a road that says Kennedy Road. To very carefully take your left there, and as you wind down this small, narrow road on your right-hand side, as you turn, you'll see a roadhouse diner that looks like something that came out of the 50s. As soon as you turn off that main road, it feels like you've time traveled back into the past, decades and decades. You wind down a little road. During the daytime, it's innocuous, but at night, it feels like you've been transported somewhere else. And it feels like suddenly you're separated from the rest of the world. Now, as you reach the end of the road in Knight's Ferry, you turn left to reach a parking lot. You drive past a sign that says Rick's Saloon, a place where I like to hang out and just enjoy sharing stories and music with strangers and making friends. We stop in the parking lot and we walk back up the road towards the covered bridge, and already Darian is a little bit nervous because he'd never done anything like that before. And to Derek and Thomas, it wasn't a big deal. Those are two buddies that I grew up with, and we occasionally would set out to Knight's Ferry, and we'd walk the length of the covered bridge in complete silence, complete darkness. We would turn off our lamps and any flashlights, and we'd no saying anything until we get to the other side of the covered bridge. All you hear is the water rushing beneath you. All you hear are your footsteps creaking against the wood. You can almost hear the whispers of the pioneers and cowboys that had traveled across that bridge more than 100 years ago. And if the moon isn't out, then you are in pitch black darkness. And it doesn't matter how hard you blink or open your eyes, you cannot see anything. There's no difference between opening or closing your eyes. And so we do the walk, and Darian is kind of freaking out when I said, "Hey, man, it's cool. It's fun. Sometimes you just gotta have some adventure, you know." And so we scramble along some boulders. We're along the river now, and the moon is out that night. It's clear. There's some light cloud coverage. We can hear the river running. Probably had been good snowfall because the river was quite loud. And we could see clearly, and it was just a beautiful night. So I was explaining some photography techniques. I was explaining, look, here are the settings for your camera. This is the ideal kind of lens. Here is the framing that you would like. It all depends on where the moon is, if the moon is to your back or if it's in front of you, wherever you're aiming your camera. So the night goes on, and we are just relaxing and enjoying taking photos. I've got other cameras, so I'm letting Derek shoot. Thomas has his own camera. And we hear something in the distance. And I'm not sure if anyone noticed it at first, and I didn't really want to say anything because I didn't want to panic Darian. He was already feeling a little bit worried from when we walked across the covered bridge. But I heard something, and as we're laughing and talking, I kind of say, "Hold on, guys, for a second. I just want to hear something really quick." And I hear a light yipping, and you can hear it in the distance. It's just not quite a growl, not quite a bark. It's quite high-pitched, and I heard it coming from one direction, and I thought, okay, that sounds like a coyote. Not a big deal. And I said, let's try and keep our voices down and we'll hear it. And at this point, it had already been about a 15 to 20 minute walk from the car. where the parking lot was, and we had scrambled across some rocks and boulders, and we're taking photos. We're trying to hold still. We don't want to vibrate the cameras. The trick with the camera is to have it on the tripod. You open the shutter, you press the shutter button, the shutter on the camera opens, it lets light in, but it needs to stay open. Normally the shutter in the camera stays open for a fraction of a second, but to do night photography, you've got to keep it open for 15, 20, 30 seconds. And in that moment, you hear a loud click. You hear the shutter snap open in your camera. And when that happens, you keep quiet. It feels like you're holding your breath. It's almost as if you can hear the light entering your camera, etching onto the sensor, creating this brilliant landscape photo. So we all synchronize, we take our shot, and we sit there in silence and we wait. And the yipping gets closer and closer. And I said, hey guys, I'm not sure if we should pack up pretty soon here. I think that coyote is getting closer. And Darian's saying, oh, no, I'm really enjoying this. I'm starting to have fun. I think I'm learning a lot. And Derek and Thomas and I had been in somewhat situations before, and they're kind of going, well, we'll start walking back a little bit and we'll see what's happening. So we frame up again, set our shutters for 30 seconds, hit the shutter, snap. We're holding our breath in silence. And then we hear it, and the yipping gets louder and louder, but suddenly it's not just from one direction like it was before. I can hear it coming from two different directions now. And I'm thinking, uh-oh, that's really bad if I can hear it actively coming from two different directions now. And it's getting louder and closer and closer. And I'm thinking, we need to pack up. So Thomas, Derek, and I pick up our stuff. We start walking back, and Darian says, oh, no, man, just one more shot. This is going really great. It's going awesome. And we're thinking, shit, okay, we'll let him take one more shot. So he sets up. He takes about another minute to set up. And he doesn't really believe me about the yipping. Hits the shutter button on his camera. Snap. It's dead silent for a second. But then suddenly there's a loud, sharp yip. And I can hear it coming from three different directions now. It's coming from the left, from the right, and from right ahead of us. And I said, we have to go now. And at that point, we can hear these things are close. And Darian looks at me and he goes, oh shit. And I said, grab your camera now. And his camera has not even finished taking a photo. That shutter is still open. And he grabs the camera. We all grab our gear. And we are running at this point, and we think, holy shit, okay. And I already had my camera tucked away at that point. I had it back in my bag, had my backpack on, I'm carrying my tripod, and we are hauling ass, but we are still in amongst the boulders and the rocks, so we're scrambling and tripping, and we're moving, and I can hear the yipping close behind us now. It was probably only about 60 yards away from us, and we are hauling ass, and we're basically sprinting across these rocks and boulders, and we're jumping, and my hand slipped at one point and I dropped my tripod, and we make it, I run a couple steps, and I look back and I said, oh shit. Thomas and Derek look back, and I'm calculating, and my brain time has frozen for a moment as I'm thinking to myself, should I stop? Should I go back and get the tripod? Because these things are close. I can hear it, and there's definitely at least 5 of them. This is loud at this point. And I'm looking at them. It would have been wiser for me to keep running, but I sprinted back and I grabbed it, picked up my tripod, and I'm trying to catch up to the others now. They've gone on without me. And we're moving, and we're starting to make some distance. We can hear it. We're starting to get away from these things. And then I hear a slam and a clatter, and I look back, and Darian had tripped. And I said, come on, man, come on. And he goes, I'm stuck. My leg is stuck. And his foot had gotten jammed in between the boulders there. He had slipped between a crevice, and he was trying to pull himself out, but he had stepped in so hard. He was sprinting at a full bore, and I'm not sure. Oh shit, I don't know if he's broken his leg. So I run back. I grab his leg. We're trying now. Derek is there too. We're trying to pull his leg out, and these things are just getting louder and louder. We hear it yip, yip. And we're thinking, shit, we are about to get ambushed by a pack of coyotes. We are screwed. And just when it seems like we're not going to be able to get his leg out, we yank his leg out, we start running, and we finally make it to the pavement. And at that point, we are at full bore. We are sprinting as hard as we possibly can. We are drenched in sweat. And we're passing through houses. We run through the street lamps, and we're trying to look behind us. And we hear, as soon as we're in the street and we're under the street lamps and we run past the Rick's Saloon sign, the yipping head faded behind us, and it was almost as if they didn't want to follow us across the road. They wanted to stay in amongst the boulders along the river. And we run back to the car. We have all of our hands on the car as if it's home base. And we're looking at each other, and Darian goes, "Holy shit, oh my God, you were right, this thing does actually happen, stuff like this does happen." And Derek and Thomas and I look at each other, and we are laughing our asses off, and we're saying, "I told you, man, I told you this actually happens." And he goes, I should have believed you. We hop back in the car, and we just sat, and I think we must have had some chips and some snacks and some sodas waiting for us, and we just decompressed, and we caught our breath before we drove back. We were pretty quiet and uncomfortable for the first half hour, but as soon as we sort of hit the lights of civilization, we got back through Oakdale, we just took a deep sigh of relief and started laughing about it. And that's the story for tonight. That's the time we got ambushed by a pack of coyotes. Thanks for sticking through to the end, and here's the small twist at the end of the story. The guy that I took to show night photography to, his name is actually Darian. I mean, there's no reason to make up a fake name. There's the twist. His name is actually Darian. So thanks very much for spending some time with me and coming to hang out. I hope you enjoyed that story. Let me know if you'd like to hear more of these kinds of stories. Please take care of yourselves. Be well. Okay, I'll come up with some cool, funny videos for you. Take care. Have a great week. Hey, did you like the background music for this video? You can actually get this music and use it in your projects, whether you want to use it for videos or games. If you are a Patreon supporter, you can download this whole pack of music. And I have a bunch of other tracks of music as well. I have quite a bit of music that's also free to everyone. You don't have to be a paying Patreon member, but this pack is exclusive to Patreon supporters, and I will have more music packs coming up as well that I will be doing regularly, so please feel free to check that out. Take care. Thank you.